From the home offices of Ash and Flo, this is Unbillable Hours, a podcast about professional services marketing. Stick around to listen to our insights, tips, and best practices to improve your firm's marketing and even your career.
So welcome everybody to this new episode of Unbillable Hours, where we'll be discussing the Great Resignation, right? And my guest today is Ash, because Ash, you wrote an article about the Great Resignation, and you and I have been discussing, of course, the staffing, the hiring pains in the consulting industry for a while now. And well, I wanted to dive into the article with you for a bit, but just before we started recording, you said you think there's no solution as such, or no solution per se to the hiring problem, right?
Yeah, there is no clear solution to the hiring problem. Actually, that is. Let's bring our friends from maths and linguistics here, and everyone talks about the halting problem. The halting problem is not solvable. The same way, the hiring problem is actually not a solvable problem. It is going to continually exist in some manner or form because it is one of the primary drivers of the economy, of economics, human capital. If you're trying to start thinking, I need to get more people to do work, the first question you got to ask is, what kind of work? And why are you just trying to solve people why are you trying to solve a problem by throwing people at it? You can throw money at a problem. Yeah, that can work. Throw people at a problem. The people who are going to come in there, first of all, they've got their own needs. Not only do they have their own needs, do you know what their needs are? Do their needs and your company's needs meet? Are you basically just trying to throw people at the problem because you just decided that, hey, I've got these massive transformation projects going on and I need staff to get this work done.
Yeah.
Guess what? What you're doing is essentially completely opposite of what you preach. And what I mean here is this whole sustainability thing. Throwing people at a problem is one of the worst things you can do from an ESG goal standpoint. People are a resource that actually causes some amount of pollution, and if you just keep your projects stagnant waiting for people to help you fill it out, you're wasting lots of energy keeping a project on pause. This is not like taking your TV and putting it on like sleep mode and thinking, I'm saving some amount of power. This is stopping massive transformation kind of stuff. So yeah, you were going to say something, Flo?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because that takes the topic of the Great Resignation, staffing pains, into a direction which I like, which is the discussion about before we talk about hiring people, let's talk about how scalable are your service offerings and it's your business model, right? Yeah. But let's shelve that, because I think your article started slightly differently, right? And people can find it on LinkedIn. We'll put it into the show notes. But I think you first discuss a few of the reasons or the drivers behind the Great Resignation. I thought that was a bit interesting, because you raise a few other points than just, people now have unemployment benefits and stuff thanks to COVID, so there's leverage, and they reflect. You had a couple of other points in there, and you even make some arguments that predate the COVID disruption. So how can you summarize that a little bit?
Of course. So let's look at the kind of people that you're trying to hire right now. Most of them are between their early 20s. They're basically the Gen Z and Millennials. Yeah. Now, if you go into like the career history of the eldest Millennials, they were first hit by one of the biggest beats of the 21st century, the dot-com bubble burst, the early 2000s recession. The peak Millennials, the mid-Millennials, they were hit by the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. And this also affected the early Millennials because they were just, starting to build a career, starting to get somewhere. Now, these were two big shifts where a lot of people graduated from university right into, and they found it really difficult to get employment. They couldn't really find jobs or anything like their parents and their predecessors because they're not getting jobs. Nothing really killed inflation. It was still going on. And they found out that they had to rely on themselves. So this resulted in like creation of like temporary jobs. There was a time when all of these things were just called temp jobs, temp gigs, but then it became like a gig economy. You started having like technology enabling people working temporary jobs. You could either you'd find in the last 10, 12 years there are plenty of contract roles that were between 3 and 6 months. And these are like IT, marketing, finance, a lot of key roles, basically 3 to 6 months. And besides that, companies rose and fell. Like this kind of situation resulted in like a lot of people creating startups. People get employed by startups. They think that this is a place to work. The startup like survives for maybe like 2 to 3 years, dies. People then move into another company. It's been a rite of passage for a lot of the entrepreneurial people to create a startup, let it fail, then get a job in the corporate world. This has happened to a lot of people.
Because you've done a startup and now it's I mean, it is valuable experience, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It's really valuable experience. And so what happened is that people were used to cycles of employment that were under 3 years, maybe 5 years at max. And people were also focusing on multiple careers. Everyone was like, I am a, artist / technologist. I am a writer / marketer. I am a X / Y. That kind of multiple career pathway kind of opened up. Not only that, you would find, like, you and I both know that plenty of people in marketing did not even start from marketing. They started from various other careers. So what we're really finding is that there were multiple career paths. There were multi-career individuals. There's a gig economy where people's career trajectory was multiple short spurts, and people hop jobs because
and I think that there's also the growing, maybe because of that, or from that also came the insight that this old rule of people care about, how long you stay with a company. Like they'll ask you in your job interview if you held this or that role for just a year or something like that. That's essentially gone now. I don't know if you agree.
I absolutely agree.
In parallel to the people learning to live in the situation you described, it was also sort of the companies learning it, and now it's fine for everybody. Like the word you just said there, job hopping or being a job hopper, that I'm exaggerating maybe a little bit, but that more or less disappeared because everybody's fine with that's just how we live today.
It is. It's pretty much how we live. Like I can tell you that at a lot of places I work, I found myself working with people at the older generation who've been there for like 10, 15 years, and people my age and younger being there for a much shorter period of time. In a lot of places, I found it hilarious that I was actually one of the younger people just because anytime they got someone young, they would just last about a year or two, especially if they were in their 20s. People in their 30s last maybe like 3 years or so in a job because it looks bad on a resume or something, but that's only if it's permanent. If it's contract, that's totally fine. And companies took advantage of this whole contract thing because guess what? When they hire a contractor, they don't need to focus on any of the benefits. Basically, hiring someone as a contractor is a lot cheaper than hiring someone as a permanent employee. You pay a salary of say X to a full-time employee, but you have to put in a lot of benefits. That basically means that getting this person then costs them like 1.5x or something. You get a contractor, you pay X, and that's all you have to pay. You don't have to worry about the extra overhead. So companies were like, this is good for us as well. It keeps our costs down.
So everybody got trained in this world of multi-optionality, right? And switching things around. I think in your article you also wrote that and I think that's an important point, how so many people learn to have multiple careers at once, right?
Yes.
I work at a firm during the day. I have a TikTok account during the night and maybe monetize that, or I teach a course online or whatever that is. And that also, I mean, let's be honest, people who work in consulting tend to be, among the people with options, like of a better word. So yeah, there's also that. So then COVID hits, and we find ourselves at the end of it in the situation now, which is, demand for consulting services through the roof. No one has any bench left. And then we struggle with the fact that, and this is a question, maybe the job we have to offer isn't as cool anymore as it might have been pre-pandemic or pre a couple of other things, right? And we're taking that, which you could say is maybe what's now a flawed product, to a market where people have lots of choices. Is that sort of the...
There is that. There is also the fact that let's be fully, blunt here. One of the key things that keeps people in a job is compensation, is how much do they earn. And because people get rewarded for jumping jobs by getting paid a higher salary, because everyone wants to attract talent, while companies don't do anything for the existing talent, people are used to jumping jobs. And guess what? This is now the status quo. People will jump jobs because you're not able to raise the salary of people who are within your group. Just embrace the fact that the people who are working for you will be working for you for shorter cycles, and work on something that enables you to attract these people back. You will be paying them more, but they have the experience and they have the skills, and now they've got some additional skills that will be beneficial for you. So,
and I will say that that is what I liked about the article, is you just, that is a good way of putting it, I think, is to say, stop complaining about it. These are the new rules. This is just how it's going to stay like that. So how can we jostle to prepare for it? And just to get a small point in there to what I alluded to earlier with the problems that are inherent in the consulting business model. If you are a firm that's primarily sort of, I hate the word body leasing, so let's say it's expert leasing, right? You lease out your experts, and you don't have too many sort of scalable solutions you can sell, but it's sort of time and materials business. I think what you say is doubly true, because I'm in trouble, because if I want to grow, I need more people. My business model doesn't offer anything else. But also, I think that also makes it less attractive for the people, because consultants are smart people, right? So they understand, if I go to a time and materials place who sells my hours, their margin, there's a cap to that. The amount of hours I spend can be an earner for them. There's a cap to that. So there's sort of a limit. If I go to a software company that can drive 90% plus margins on the back of a SaaS business, being well compensated to your point there, is probably more likely to be on the table, right? So I think the business model is a factor in the compensation point as well.
So when you're looking at that, right? So there's two things to figure out, when you need to get people and when you need to retain people. So let's look at how you can retain people first. Yeah, because that's key. So we all know that this generation, because they've been jumping around, they do learn. There's a lot of self-learning involved, and people enjoy it too. Everyone's told that learning never stops. People are told about this through self-help stuff and everything. So the learning part's fine. But what's really missing is mentoring. And by mentoring, I mean not just someone who is your, line manager or something like that. You need a proper mentor. You need someone to, train you in what is your possible options for your career. What is your career pathway going to look like? What is best for you to balance your personal and professional life? You need a mentor for that. And it needs to be more than just your line manager. So organizations need to figure out how can they build this kind of network of mentors from different levels, and in some cases even bring in external mentors or alumni or things like that. So that's the other thing. Now, and then on retention, if you really want to retain people, offer better compensation in terms of rewarding people who are seeking stability, But for this, first of all, identify the ones seeking stability. Like when we interview someone, we ask them things that you're looking for. If you hear someone say stability, you almost immediately hire them. Most people do. But once a person is inside a company, no one really even checks if this individual is seeking stability or not. These kinds of metrics need to be looked into. Like the personal needs of the employee needs to actually play a role, because that is a way you can retain people.
Yeah.
And this is not something that the line manager needs to look into alone. This is something that the organization needs to look into.
I think that's interesting, because what you said there, I hadn't thought about it that way, but it's true, right? Even if we assess, like, is this person a good fit, and is there a high probability of them making their career at this place?
Yeah.
As in, they want this is the right place for them. So we assess that as we bring them in. We do not assess it that much
once they're in.
I mean, there's this performance reviews and what can we do for you and all these things. So there's some of it, but a lot of that is just one size fits all, right? It's a standardized process. We push people through. It's not. We don't really see the individual. So maybe we miss the point where that changes in the fringe cases, or in the case where not the fringe case, but in the cases where you could maybe actually sort of step in and intervene. I think those are the hardest to spot. I mean, you'll laugh, but in my case, it was pretty obvious when I handed in my notice. Everybody told me how no one was surprised by that. So I'm not one of those cases where people overlooked it, but I think there are a couple of people who sort of borderline dissatisfied, and if you would just tweak a few things, you could really make them hang on and thrive. But yeah, it's difficult to spot. So I like the idea of having a deliberate way of identifying them. Yeah. What else is on the list? Sorry.
I like the next thing I'd say is, like, you'd find people who are willing to take risks. Encourage these risk takers to build a network, because guess what? These people are the ones who'll be driving innovation in your firm in one way or the other. If they're taking risks, and by the way, it has to be a calculated risk, and there's got to be some accountability for them and some history, reward them for it and put them in a position to do more of these.
Yeah.
That will help you keep your high performance there. Another thing is to identify the skills that are marketable. These transferable skills, this will help the organization, the mentors, and most importantly, that individual understand what kind of parts would they have in the company. Don't give them a suggestion that, hey, I've got a role here that you can do, without like analyzing what skills they have. Don't just offer something because you like the person. Offer something because it fits and suits the person. That's an important distinction to make. And then that leads into the part of like building flexible offerings that consider the individual's needs. And you don't need to advertise these kinds of things. People will, the best way to, sell something is word of mouth. No marketing spend can compare with word of mouth, because if you build these kinds of like flexible offerings, if you take into consideration an individual's needs, if you get all of that, these people will advocate for your company and will get people in, and they will rise into positions where they can bring in the right kind of people as well. So that's on the retention side of things. Do you have anything to add on that, Flo?
Well, the flexibility, yeah. I'm thinking back to my point about how I go on about how people don't have scalable solutions or easily repeatable processes. Yeah, but your point also is valid. So I think there's probably a sweet spot somewhere where it's standardized and prepackaged enough so that you can actually, take on more work without hiring new people, and also without overworking your existing ones. I should say that, right? We have commentary in the news these days about consulting firms running white-collar sweatshops and all that nonsense, or not nonsense. I don't know, because
it's a valid thing.
I don't know. I'm not inside on the process, but I think there's a lot of that going on, right? Overworked, so they leave, right, and then their colleagues get extra work on top of that. I'm not saying the firms aren't hiring, because all of them do, but to your point, they're not succeeding. So where's all that work going to go? Well, to the people who stay behind. Sorry, that's a tangent. What I was saying is, there must be a sweet spot between standardizing stuff so much that you have a certain degree of scalability and plan predictability and so forth for everybody involved. But then there's still enough room for experimentation, for doing new things, and for example, also I think that goes into your point, right? To give those risk takers you mentioned something new to do. Period.
Absolutely. And now just to touch on hiring side of things. This is things to think about on the hiring side of things, right? Not things to like implement when you're hiring. It's things to think about as you plan what your hiring structure is. Here, the first thing you got to think about is like your succession planning.
Yeah.
Because of everything that we said earlier, plan for your best performers to be there for 3 to 5 years, and have your succession plan for a shorter time period, because if these people leave, someone needs to step into their roles, and these others could move into better positions, or they may even exit the firm, but you actually have a plan to do it. It doesn't really help if you just rotate people on like a, I don't know, 1 to 2 year basis. That's fine and all, but that's not what you're trying to look at. What is going to happen is you're going to lose some of these people as you rotate, and you need to make sure that you've planned for people exiting and not staying in the rotation cycle. You've planned for people to like take over other roles, and this really works if you've got that kind of mindset as you hire.
And I'm guessing, but if I'm guessing that is a process question as well, right? Because I mean, military units do this, like 8 people, every 2, like 2 of each of those are all trained for the same job. So everybody learns to do one job of someone else in case something happens. But sorry, so I would guess that if you were to do that right, you have the succession plan in place, like you mentioned, but also the people who work on your team can maybe take a week off a bit more easily because there's another person next in line who at least knows how to firefight while they're out or whatever, right? So I love this point.
And on that same note, it's like just plan for 50% of your staff to have this kind of like turnover period, and offer the roles to your long-term contractors or those stuck under like, budgetary headcount issues. Because what happens in those specific cases is that you have people who know the organization, who are loyal, who are staying there, who aren't being rewarded. Reward them for this while you're accounting for people to exit. And this is really, really relevant for professional services firms because they have a high turnover. And why do you need to keep hiring when you've got the right people to move into these roles, and you can hire new people to fill in the other roles? So that way everything kind of balances itself out better.
And again, I'm not an HR expert and I haven't seen all the data, but I think your point is extra valid because what I'm hearing and reading in some places is that the resignation wave that's hitting the consulting industry, the troves of people leaving, a majority share of those are sort of the senior manager, project manager, engagement manager level, right? Your mid-level folks who lead the teams that do the work. And I'd much rather give someone like that a budget and permission to bring some freelancers on, right? So I can keep her or him doing the essential, critical, vital role of engagement management, right? Than to see them burn out, leave, and then I still have the team of 20-year-olds, no offense, around, but the person who had the client connections, the relationships, who was on top of all the projects, that they are gone. Like that's the wrong.
That's the wrong message.
That's the wrong way for it to go wrong. I don't know. Obviously, you also don't want to lose the people from the team either. But
and the last thing.
That's the worst case. Yeah.
And the last thing here, and which is really key, is to build a better alumni network. If a person's relationship with the company is pleasant, if their exit is pleasant, it's not really saying goodbye. It's like, hey, I'll be back, and then you can hire back some of these better performers by keeping an active alumni network, because they will likely to come back when they say, hey, there's a better opportunity and I'm not too happy where I am right now, so I should come back. And also they will be able to give you people who are their equals or betters, because we know that people attract similar kind of people. So if you foster, nurture, and build this network, you will be able to keep attracting the right kind of talent. And things like this is what people need to just have in the back of their mind as they think about hiring strategies. And marketing does play a big role here. Talent attraction plays a big role here, because the message that we give doesn't say any of this. It's just, we are awesome, we are amazing, and that doesn't mean anything.
And by the way, that is to bring this back maybe a little bit to our listeners and the topic of the show. Like, I read this piece and I was wondering, has this relevant to marketing or recruitment marketing, to make it specific?
Yeah.
And I think this is exactly, so there's 2 points. Obviously, you need to do this for your own team, right?
Yeah.
What you just said, build an alumni network. It's not just the firm doing that. It's also you, right?
Yes.
It's you thinking about, oh, how can my 5-person marketing team stay in touch with the interns?
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, if you're listening, you might have a standardized process for that and put some thought into it. But based on my experience, chances you don't have that. So you could think about these points just from a marketing team perspective. But I think what you said there at the end is the important thing. And that is, if we as marketers take a service to market, which we realize doesn't work, we got to go back and go upstream and argue in-house with the business about that service. Mm-hmm. Because no amount of marketing will sell it, or, you know, not as per expectations. So you got to advise internally and guide internally. And I think the same is just true with, like, jobs are also products in a way, right? You throw them on the job market. So I think if you are struggling with recruitment marketing efforts, you're not seeing the performance results everybody's expecting, and the onus seems to be entirely on you, maybe read Ash's article, think about, like, how's our workforce strategy? How are we taking these things into account? And if you come up with, you know, unpleasant facts, you could take that article and take some arguments from it and say, go back and say, I realize you expected me to bring in 1,200 CVs this month, but, you know, maybe your product's broken. That sense, right?
There is one point to be added about perception versus reality, but that feels like an entire other episode. So we'll get into that, because the whole issue, and this is something for consulting firms, not just on the hiring side, because most of these jobs are all butts on seats, but it's also about, like, the offerings and how we are perceived in the market. We need to be realistic. We need to, like, build this perception versus reality in an era of transparency where everyone can look you up. Stop trying to sell miracle dust. Focus on what you are actually trying to do.
Yeah.
There's
no more lying or pretending, which is just a fancy word for me.
Yeah. You can't get away with it anymore.
Yeah.
Not effectively.
I forgot. Sorry, that's tangential, and I'll stop the recording in a second. But there was an agency, or still is, who had that claim. I think it was a PR shop. I forgot which one it was. That always said their tagline was "The truth well told," and I like that, and I still like it to this day, because I think that's also in recruitment marketing. That's all you get to do. You can tell the truth. Well put, but you cannot sort of make up stuff and then expect people to stay on or flock to you or whatever. That's gone. That's done. Sorry.
I had a quick look, and I don't really think it is an agency that you're super fond of anyway. So I think we can call it.
I said I like the claim. I do not know and cannot comment on how well they stand by it in their business practice. But I think the idea is sound, and it's a great guideline to have, I think. Yeah. Cool. Now that was interesting. So I'll encourage everybody to go forth, read your article, and we're at the top of the hour in a couple of seconds. So I'll stop the recording in just a bit. Thanks for that, Ash. Thanks for coming onto the show. I wish you a great
have a great weekend.
Weekend eventually. Yeah. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Unbillable Hours. If you want more, tune in next week. You know where to find us.